I thought I closed my pen, but I opened it and just drew all over my finger. So if a boat clear astern becomes overlapped within 2 of her hull lengths. So hull lengths for us is, we can just use the term boat lengths. They use hull to allow for if a boat happens to have a bowsprit or something, that doesn't count. So for us, we can think hull lengths, boat lengths, whichever is easier for us to picture there when we're talking about FJs and 420s. So if we become overlapped within 2 boat lengths, we have 2 boats here on the screen. These 2 boats are overlapped, but they are not within 2 boat lengths. Oh, here's somebody else hopping in. They're not within 2 boat lengths of each other, right? So we could fit 2 boats in here with room to spare. So there's one part of that rule, right? So if a boat clear astern becomes overlapped within 2 of her hull lengths, so if they're not within 2 boat lengths of each other, then this rule, the if part, is not satisfied, and this rule won't apply. To leeward of a boat on the same tack. So another requirement here, we have to be on the same tack. So right here, these boats are both on starboard tack. If we move them a little closer, now they are overlapped. They're both on the same tack. They're within 2 boat lengths of each other. So far, those boats are all satisfying the conditions for this rule to apply. She shall not sail above her proper course while they remain on the same tack and overlapped. So proper course, we can pull up our definitions. I think we've looked at this before, but we may as well just refresh our memory. Where it is right down here. Proper course. The course a boat would sail to finish as soon as possible in the absence of the other boats referred to in the rule using the term. A boat has no proper course before her starting signal. So we will keep this sentence in mind for a little bit later, but let's look at this first sentence right off the bat. So right here, we've got yellow boat, blue boat. This blue boat is heading somewhere. We're going to a mark here, right? If we say that the proper course rule applies, then this blue boat has to do what she would do if the yellow boat were not there. So if yellow boat weren't here, blue boat would just sail straight to the mark. The blue boat would not head up into the wind like that if nobody else were around, right? Because that's not how to finish as quickly as possible going around this mark. So if the blue boat in this situation heads up like that in order to slow the yellow boat down, then that might be breaking the proper course rule because it's something she would not have done if the yellow boat wasn't there in the first place. All right, so that's what the definition proper course means. So like we said earlier, it's not necessarily the shortest distance. It's going to be, we're talking about the shortest time, as soon as possible, right? So for example, in light air, in FJs or 420s, we might decide to not sail wing on wing. We might not sail directly downwind because we have found that that is slower than if we go at wider reaching angles, right? So we're sailing more distance in less time. So it's not the distance we're worried about, it's the time. All right, let's scroll back down to the rule. Whoop, too far, there we go. All right, so she shall not sail above her proper course if these conditions are met, unless in doing so she promptly sails astern of the other boat. So we'll come back to this phrase in a minute as well. That one is, it kind of closes a little loophole that was there before. This rule does not apply if the overlap begins while the windward boat is required by Rule 13 to keep clear. So for this sentence here that's highlighted, we can say the reason, what that's saying is if we had this situation, we've got maybe a boat is sailing somewhere and there's another boat has just gone across him and this yellow boat decides, hey, I'm going to, tack right on top of this guy and like kind of slam dunk on top of him. And maybe it's almost like a team race tactic, right? Or maybe it's close to the end of a fleet race and he's watching out for this one guy. And so if this guy is tacking here, the overlap between these two boats happened. It was established while this boat was tacking, right? So this yellow boat was required by Rule 13, the tacking rule, to keep clear of the blue boat. So because that's when the overlap was established, the proper course rule does not apply to this blue boat. And so he would have the ability to head the yellow boat up, to luff up above his proper course, right? So that's probably a situation we won't see very often, but if you were kind of confused about what that sentence might have been, that's what it is. So let's bring this back up. All right, so a couple things here. So one, just to start off, what's 17 here for? What does it exist for? So if we remember Rule 16, that excuse me, we haven't done a whole hour on it before. I don't think we need to do a whole hour on it to study Rule 16. But basically says if a right-of-way boat changes course, you have to give the other boat, the give-way boat, room to keep clear, right? So 16 is saying how fast can you change your course when you're the right-of-way boat. 17 is saying how much can you change your course when you're the right-of-way boat. So 17 is a rule that's either turned on or turned off. It's not halfway. So you either have luffing rights, as Dan finds it easiest to explain, and I kind of do too. So you either have the ability to head all the way up into the wind from wherever you are, or you don't have the ability to head above your proper course at all. So there's no part of Rule 17 never says you can head above your proper course, but only this much, only to close hauled or only to a beam reach. Nothing like that. It's either totally on or totally off. So that's what's going on there. And when we are trying to figure out, does Rule 17 apply? That's often the most confusing part of it, right? When in all these possible situations that we could become overlapped, when does this Rule 17 actually apply to us? So there's kind of two ways you can go about it. You can go about it looking at you can look at what is all the requirements first, or you can look at the lack of requirements, if that makes sense. So we can run through. Let's run through the requirements first for this to happen, right? So if we are, let's pull off screen share so that we can see the whiteboard. Right. So there's multiple ways that two boats could become overlapped. So first, we could be sailing somewhere in a straight line, and we start out not overlapped. We definitely have one boat clear stern of the other, right? And then eventually things move so that now we are overlapped. So the blue boat has become overlapped. There's something, a weird metallic echo. I don't know what was up with that. The blue boat has become overlapped with the yellow boat, right? And the way that it happened is the blue boat caught the yellow boat. The blue boat established overlap from astern. So that's what that means. They came from directly behind the yellow boat, and they became the lured boat by catching the yellow boat from behind. So that's establishing overlap from astern. We could also establish overlap by jibing, right? So maybe there's two boats down here, and if you look at where their booms, this guy, the yellow boat, is on starboard, blue boat's on port, blue boat jibes over, now he's on starboard. Now we're both on the same tack, and we are overlapped, and this is a lured boat. But overlap was not established from astern. It was established by jibing. Even if this boat had come from astern originally, they were on opposite tacks. Now they're on the same tack. So this is when, in relation to this rule, the overlap began. We could also have maybe the windward boat caught up, right? So instead of the lured boat catching up from behind, this time it's the windward boat catching up from behind. So you can almost think of it as the blue boat has established lured overlap from ahead, but they did not catch the yellow boat caught them. So that's another way we can get overlap. We could also establish overlap, or not establish overlap, but turn this, we could get into a situation involving this rule by coming from farther apart. Remember, we first said within 2 boat lengths. So right now, we're more than 2 boat lengths. We're maybe close to 2.5, 3 boat lengths away. But we can go even farther. We'll go as far away as we want. But if we slowly sidle over this way, slowly close the distance, suddenly we are within 2 boat lengths of the other guy. So now we have to look at that rule, right? So that's another way that this overlap that we're concerned with could happen. But it turns out it turns out that the only time this rule turns on is if the overlap was established from astern. So if the blue boat, the lured boat, caught up to the yellow boat from behind and then became the lured boat there, that's the only time that Rule 17 applies. So like Dan said, we like to describe it as luffing rights, or what can I do? Can I head all the way up into the wind if I needed to, right? So it's kind of the extreme example. We won't often be in a situation where we want to head ourselves all the way up into the wind, but do we have that ability if we needed it, right? So when we're looking at this, we basically say we always have luffing rights unless we established overlap from astern. So unless we caught the yellow boat from behind, we do have luffing rights. If we did catch the yellow boat from behind, we do not have luffing rights. And that one sentence or 2 sentences, however I said it, that's Rule 17. That's all we really need to know, right? So we do have to understand what proper course means. We do have to understand what establishing overlap from astern means. But beyond that, the rule actually breaks down pretty simply. So that's the basic stuff. Now let's go into the couple of things that I said, hey, we'll come back to this phrase later. And then we'll look at a couple cases, a couple little quizzes, and see what we can work out from there. So the first thing that I was saying we'd come back to is this phrase right here. I guess while we're here, while I've said, hey, this is everything, does anybody have any other questions they want clarified about that? Does that, when we break it down that simply, does that make sense? Or is there still something that is not quite clear? All right, well, hearing nothing, hopefully that helps us. Now, let's look at this phrase here. So, unless in doing so, she promptly sails astern of the other boat. So, what does that mean? Why does that matter, right? So, let's imagine a situation where we are sailing and maybe a boat has just tacked right here, right? So, we've probably seen that situation before. So in this situation, we talk about sailing in clean air. If we're the blue boat and we don't have to be heading right here, if we're just trying to get up the course, we know we don't want to sail in bad air. So we want to tack out and not be sailing in this yellow boat's bad air. But if we only had that simplified version of Rule 17 that I just said, those 2 sentences, if we only had that rule, then this blue boat would technically not be able to tack out, because look at this. They are within 2 boat lengths of the yellow boat. They are both on the same tack, and they have established overlap from astern, right? So technically, they're bound by Rule 17. They cannot head above their proper course. And right now, above close hauled is typically not your proper course, right? So in theory, somebody who was like really looking out to get you could yell about that, except for this nice little, oh, you can't see my finger, except for this nice little highlighted phrase right here. Unless in doing so, she promptly sails astern of the other boat. So because of the fact that we say, hey, look, I'm tacking and I have sailed astern of the other boat, I have not hit you, and I'm good. That means we're okay. So we're allowed to do that. So that's basically what that phrase is in there for. That's all it really means. It's not got some like weird hidden meaning that you have to worry about, right? In theory, if you were, this close, maybe this guy for some reason was going slow and somehow you did catch up to this point and you realize, yeah, let me tack out. Well, right now we actually are overlapped and we don't have the room to sail astern of the other boat, right? So technically this motion breaks Rule 17. So we have to slow ourselves up a tiny bit so that we can tack behind them in order to do that. But that's probably not going to be very common, because how many times is this blue boat that's already in yellow's boat's bad air going to be sailing up that quickly? So that little phrase there gives you that little out. It's probably a situation that we've never even considered, because that's what you do when you're in that situation, is you tack out, and like nobody imagines that it would be against the rules, but it turns out it could have been, except we put this thing in. So that one's cool. That one's out of our way. There was one other thing I think I said we'd come back to earlier. Maybe it was just this other sentence that we've already talked about. So that's okay. If I remember it, we'll come back to it. But let's switch over and look at a couple of different cases here. Oh, that's not it. That's the call book that I was looking at earlier. All right, case 46, on the same tack, proper course. So we've got a situation here. We have, again, thank you very much, World Sailing. Here's where the wind is coming from. Our finish line looks like it's very biased to the boat end, I would assume. That's over here. The committee boat must be anchored over that way somewhere. But these two boats are both going for the pin, the buoy on the left side of the finish line, looking upwind. And we've got leeward boat here, windward boat here. Right now, they're both going directly downwind. Right. So this windward boat looks like he's just aiming right for the pin. The leeward boat decides to head up and head for the finish line. The question was, is that legal? The windward boat did not think it was. They thought that the leeward boat would be bound by their proper course, which should be somewhere over here. Let's see, what was the decision? So W had been sailing almost dead downwind, straight course toward the starboard end of the finish line. L, boat that had been clear astern, so they established overlap from astern. So Rule 17 does apply in the situation. The question is just, was the leeward boat, L, were they following the rule? And did they break the rule? In the absence of W, L would have sailed a higher course directly toward the line. In order to do so, she hailed W to come up. W did not respond. L hailed again, and then luffed to a position very close to W. So looking like if there was a third position drawn, maybe W's here and L is here, something like that. W still did not respond. L stopped luffing and bore away just before contact would have occurred. So they've saved themselves from potentially being in trouble with Rule 14, avoiding a collision. And then they protested for Rule 11 because this is a windward boat, that's a leeward boat. So that's what, whether whoever was right or wrong, that's the rule that would have been broken there. So protest committee. So in this paragraph here, you kind of get the idea that in this particular case, and it's probably why it was put into the casebook, the protest committee incorrectly was interpreting the rule as W. They were looking at W's proper course. But when we're looking at this rule, it doesn't matter. The other boat's proper course does not matter. It's your proper course, right? So the proper course definition is, what would you have done to finish the race as soon as possible if the other boats were not there, right? So in this situation, taking away W, taking away this boat completely, what would L have done? Well, probably they're going to do something like this, like what they were attempting to do, right? Because we know that sailing from here up to there, if we drew it out, that's a longer line than if we went here to there. Also, when they head up a little bit onto that broad reach instead of a run completely downwind, that's also going to speed them up a little bit too, right? So they're going, in this particular case, they'll be going a shorter distance at a higher speed, which is going to beat a longer distance at a slower speed. So it was very much in L's proper course to try to do this. And they're in this situation when W is the give way boat, there's really no consideration as to what their proper course would have been. We could sit down and argue that W's proper course actually is to do the same thing, but it doesn't even matter in the end. We don't have to argue that at all. We just have to prove what's L, This is proper course. So that one is definitely want to make sure that we understand that we're dealing with ours, not with theirs. Yeah, so that was, we don't have to read through all this because that's basically what I just said. All right, cool. So now let me see if I can, what's the best way to do this? We've got a couple of quizzes. Let's see what happens if I hold it up to the camera. Nah, that'll be too difficult to read. Let's just do it this way. I'll just draw it up on the whiteboard and then we'll look through things. All right, so first off, first quiz, let's stop screen sharing so we can see the whiteboard. Perfect. All right, so we've got two boats. We'll call them, we'll just be blue and yellow again. We are coming downwind on port tack. We're on a bit of a reach. Technically in this quiz, they're under spinnaker, but we get the same effect with knots, so we won't talk about spinnakers. We don't care about them right now. So we've got two boats. They are about, what was the number? About 30 feet apart. So they're about they are 30 feet long. So a hull length in this case is 30 feet long, and they are 10 feet apart. So we are about this close, and proper course applies in this case. So we're just saying that the overlap was established from astern. The blue boat did come down and catch up to yellow like this. They're 10 feet apart, which at a 30-foot boat, that's a third of a boat length. So our rule applies to us. We're within two hull lengths of each other. As we continue downwind, the yellow boat is reminding the blue boat that they can't sail above their proper course, and blue boat's like, all right, cool, good stuff. I'm doing that. Then the yellow boat decides to make a little more distance, so they head up a bit. They widen the distance to about 30 feet, so we're about a boat length apart now, right? And the blue boat then does the same thing. They head up and they cut the distance back to that same 10 feet that we started with. The question is that allowed under Rule 17? So the yellow boat protested under Rule 17. They said the blue boat should not have done that. And we go into, we'll play it quiz style because this is the quiz book. What will be, what's the outcome of that? Did the blue boat break the rule? Should they be penalized under Rule 17? Or is what they did okay because they never made the yellow boat change course or anything? What's the answer for that? Anybody? I'm gonna wait till somebody. Dan is raising his hand. What you got, Dan?
My guess would be that Rule 17 is a little special of a rule because it doesn't, you don't have to hit or force a collision in order for you to break it, because it doesn't prescribe who has the right of way. It prescribes what you must do. So assuming that Rule 17 applies throughout the situation, which I think it does because yellow never breaks overlap or jives or goes more than 2 boat lengths away or something like that, then blue, by definition of heading up, presumably for the purpose of getting closer to yellow and not for finishing faster, is not sailing her proper course, even if she's not forcing yellow to avoid.
Yeah, I like the analysis there. A couple of points that we can go over again. So Rule 17, when we look at it, it's not a right-of-way rule, right? It's not saying it's not defining a keep clear boat in the sense that Rule 10 would be, where it says the port tack boat shall keep clear of the starboard tack boat. Rule 10 is giving the keep clear boat a responsibility. Rule 17 is giving the right-of-way boat a responsibility. And so they don't really care what's going on with the give-way boat. So in this case, right, the yellow boat is the give-way boat as the leeward boat. The blue boat is the right-of-way boat as the leeward boat. So Rule 17 is a responsibility for the blue boat, not for the yellow boat. That was weird. What was I saying? Yeah. So when the yellow boat, even when the blue boat heads up to close this distance, it is very clearly not something they would have done if yellow boat was not there, right? So it's if we wanted to fish for a motivation, it's probably the blue boat is making sure that the yellow boat can't jibe to starboard and then be a starboard boat and have the right of way. They're making sure they're close enough that yellow doesn't have the room to do that. So they obviously would not have been doing that if yellow boat wasn't there. They'd be sailing straight ahead to get to wherever their next mark or the finish or whatever the situation was. Very clearly it's not their proper course, and their defense in this particular quiz was that they did not make the windward boat, the yellow boat, they didn't make them have to avoid or anything, but it doesn't matter. The Rule 17 doesn't care about what the giveaway boat is doing or has to do. It's only a responsibility on the right-of-way boat. So despite the fact that it didn't change anything for the yellow boat in terms of their response, blue boat has still broken Rule 17. So nothing. It's not about what you're doing to the giveaway boat. It's about what you're doing with yourself. So again, proper course. It's your proper course. You follow your own proper course without regard to the giveaway boat. Cool. So another little point that may or may not have showed itself as we were talking through the initial rule. All right, cool. So that's our first quiz. Let's go for another. I think we got time for another couple. Meeting will end in 4 minutes. We got time. All right. Next up, we've got. I think we'll skip that one and we'll go for this one. All right. So we have. Can I do this in the space that I have? I think we can make this work if I pull a few magnets off of here. Can you see that whole thing? Man, these magnets haven't been moved in a long time. All right, so we have two boats. I guess we'll stick with, again, the yellow boat is the heat clear boat. So in this case, at position 1, we've got two boats that are not overlapped. So clear stern, blue boat is clear stern. Then they catch up. Next up, the blue boat has come from astern and is overlapped. They are about 2.5 boat lengths away from each other. So we could draw it out, but they are not within 2 boat lengths. So right now, Rule 17 does not apply between them. Then the blue boat starts heading up. Where is this guy? They're both heading for a mark over here. If we can see in the screen. Yeah, sort of. Way off to the left. So basically like straight in a line from where blue boat number 1 is pointing. But at this point, the blue boat starts heading up. Then they keep heading up, and the yellow boat is forced to avoid. There is contact in this case. We don't have to deal with that particular thing for what we're talking about now. The question is this legal? So because there was contact, the blue boat protests because the yellow boat did not avoid. So that's Rule 11, windward leeward. The yellow boat protests under Rule 17, proper course. What would the answer be? Let's see if we can get somebody other than Dan to answer than this one, because Dan answered the last one for us. Somebody, give us a hand. Is Rule 17 applicable in this situation, or is it just Rule 11? What do we got? I may have to call on somebody. John, give us a guess. What do you think the answer is here?
Would the blue boat be in the wrong.
What would be? I'm not saying yes or no yet, but what's your reasoning for that?
Because he failed to stay on proper course.
So good guess. What were the little facts found? So one, definitely blue did not follow proper course. That's correct, because blue's proper course, we said, is just basically a straight line over to the left. So the question would be, did they have bluffing rights or did they not? Because if they did have bluffing rights, then definitely this would be okay, right? If they did not have bluffing rights, definitely this would not be okay. So we have to look through one by one. We have to figure out how we established overlap, or the overlap that we're concerned with in this rule, right? So remember we said our basic application of the rule, we have bluffing rights unless we established overlap from astern. And I guess maybe to make things a little, we could expand our sentence, our two sentences of the rule, maybe expand it a little tiny bit more. I was trying to keep it as simple as possible, but it might be worthwhile to put 3 extra words in there. So if we have bluffing rights unless we established overlap within 2 boat lengths from astern, right? So in this situation, we read that the 2 boats are about 2.5 boat lengths apart. And so it gave us a specific number because it wanted us to know that they were more than 2 boat lengths apart, right? And so we argue that in this case, we did not establish overlap from astern because our phrase is technically, now that we've noticed this case is probably worthwhile to clarify, we've noticed that we did not establish overlap within 2 boat lengths from astern. So that clarifies it a little bit more. So we established overlap from astern, but did not establish overlap within 2 boat lengths from astern. By the time we got within 2 boat lengths, we had just come from the side like this and just slowly moved toward each other, or rather one was angled more like that, right? So that, because we have that little caveat, means rule 17 actually was not turned on in this situation. And so despite the fact that blue headed above their proper course, they were allowed to. They had bluffing rights because rule 17 did not turn on. Does that make sense? Hopefully it does. So we will amend our simplified 2 sentences of rule 17, and we say you have bluffing rights unless you established overlap within 2 boat lengths from astern. So that's 1 sentence. Cool. So it's not even that bad. All right. So cool. That was a good one. Let's see about grabbing 1 more. Maybe 2 more. We actually might have room for 2 more here. Let's check it out. So this guy, should we go for him or the other one? That should work. All right. So we've got, again, trying to space things out a little bit here. We've got boat 1 and boat 2. So they are broad reaching. Their proper course is sort of like, think of a 45-degree angle going down that way, right? So L's proper course is straight ahead of her. W's proper course straight ahead of her. W, the yellow boat, has caught up with L. They're the one that caught up to the blue boat, so they've established overlap here, and they become the windward boat. While that's happening, the yellow boat begins to head up a bit. Then they bear away. The windward boat heads up, and they break overlap here. So they were very careful as these 2 guys went away. Windward boat headed up quickly, and now overlap has been broken. Now they come back down, and overlap has reestablished. So when that happens, L keeps sailing this direction. The blue boat keeps sailing this direction. The windward boat understands they're the windward boat, and they keep clear, so they don't let themselves get in a situation where they foul this guy as the lunar boat, and they protest L for Rule 17. So somebody who's not Dan or John, what would be the answer for this one? Is the blue boat in the wrong? Does that proper course Rule 17 apply? Or is there nothing wrong? Because we've already said that the yellow boat didn't break Rule 11. So there's either no penalty or the blue boat gets penalized under Rule 17. What's the answer there? Let's grab, I'll grab Douglas. Give us your thoughts on this matter. Is Douglas here? Oh, there he is.
I think it would apply, right?
Yeah, so Douglas says he thinks Rule 17 would apply. So let's walk through things here. We'll find out. So we start from here, and we said the yellow boat's the one that caught up to the leeward boat. And we remember Rule 17 applies to the right-of-way boat, not the give-way boat. So we're looking at overlap being established in relation to this blue boat. So we would kind of say, if we wanted to state it this way, we could say the overlap was established from ahead, right? Because we were ahead, and then suddenly we were not quite ahead. Now we're overlapped. So if we wanted to put it that way, we could say the overlap was established from ahead, which means that right here in this situation, and therefore right here in this situation, Rule 17 does not apply, because we know that we have to say it has to be established from astern for Rule 17 to apply. So right here, blue boat number 2 is within their rights to head the yellow boat up in what we would assume is an attempt to keep the yellow boat from continuing to pass them, right? Now we move to step 3, and we see that overlap was broken. So now Rule 17 cannot possibly apply. We know that it's completely turned off because there is no overlap. But then we go from 3 to situation 4. And now the overlap has been reestablished. But let's look at how it happened, right? So we went from step 3 to step 4. So if we imagine how that would have gone, the yellow boat headed down, look at that line. Remember, the overlap is determined by if there's a clear head and clear stern boat, then they're not overlapped, right? Because right here, we look at that line drawn across the back of the yellow boat. So right now, that line is not crossed by the blue boat. There's a clear head and a clear stern boat, no overlap. But as they head down, overlap is established. That line now begins to cross the blue boat. So there is no longer a clear head and clear stern. That means by default, overlap. Remember, we discussed that sometime last week when we were talking about Rule 18, how overlap works. So now overlap's been reestablished, but how is it established? Again, looking at the blue boat, it's in relation to the blue boat. So as the yellow boat comes back down, the line was crossed by the blue boat coming from behind the yellow boat, right? So in this case, overlap was established from astern. Look at that. That is much smaller than 2 boat lengths I would give you. So it looks like our conditions have been met. Overlap was established from astern and within 2 boat lengths. So that means the blue boat does not have luffing rights, right? So they are not allowed to sail above their proper course. And we've already said that proper course is somewhere down there in the bottom left, which means that blue boat right here is sailing above their proper course. And so right here at this moment, as soon as overlap begins, if they don't head down, then they become the boat that's in the wrong. So in this particular case, it is, in fact, the blue boat would get penalized for Rule 17. It is another one good thing to note there. So Douglas got it right. Good job. It is good to note that you're not required to anticipate, as with pretty much all the rules work this way, right? You're not required to anticipate something that's going to happen and respond before it happens to clear yourself, right? So that's the way all the Rule 15 and 16, the getting right of way and changing course while you have right of way. That's how they work. The give way boat is not required to anticipate that, hey, this lured boat is probably going to head up, so I should get out of his way. Instead, the lured boat has to show that they are heading up. They have to slowly head up, and then once that starts happening, the windward boat then has to say, oh, I see he's heading up. I have to turn out of his way. So the same thing here, right? The blue boat is, if he has done any amount of looking at the rules or racing in the past, he knows that the yellow boat is going to come back down and rule 17 is going to turn on and he won't have left and rights anymore and he has to head down. But until the overlap is actually established, the blue boat is not required to act on that. So right here, he's fine. The blue boat is okay to do this. But as soon as the yellow boat heads down and now there's overlap, rule 17 is turned on, right there is when the blue boat has to start heading down, right, back to his proper course. So doesn't have to act on it until it's actually turned on. He doesn't have to be preemptive, but as soon as it does turn down, he does have to act. So hopefully that's a distinction that is visible there. Cool. So I think that actually probably is, we have a couple minutes. Let's see if we can run through one more. Let's see. We'll go with, oh, this is a good one. We've got something to do with a start sequence. So pull these guys out of the way. All right, so we've got, for this particular race going on, we've actually got, looks like we have a boat that's anchored on the left side of the line as well. So this is the pin. This is the left-hand buoy of the starting line. And we've got two boats that are coming towards it. So before the start, we've got, actually, I need a little more room. I'm going to make this, all this blue tape does not exist. So we just have, here's the left-hand side of the start line. This is all just water. So we've got a windward boat. We've got a leeward boat. We'll keep it as the blue is the right of way. So they start out with no overlap. They get into a position where the blue boat catches up from the stern. So that's how the overlap established. Blue boat did establish from astern. As they continue toward the line, I guess we'll leave it here so we can remember that. So as they continue toward the line, they are getting close, so they have to start heading up. And we'll say that kind of this line of blue tape, that's our start line. We can see that. I don't have my markers near me, so we'll just understand that that is the line of the start. But we're getting closer, and then boom, the start sequence goes, and blue luffs up into the wind because otherwise they're going to hit the boat. And then they both eventually make it around. The yellow boat protests blue for sailing above close hauled after the starting signal. So what would be the answer to this? There was no contact or going on here. The yellow boat kept clear all the way through. So there's either, it's again like the last situation, there's either no penalty or the blue boat gets a penalty for rule 17. Which one would the answer be? See if we can get Sterling to answer this one for us. Do we still have Sterling there? Wants to give a little thought. I hear somebody. Well, if we can't get Sterling, let's see if we can grab Olivia. Can you answer this for us? Is there no penalty, or does the blue boat get penalized under 17?
Penalty.
And what's your reasoning? I'm not saying yes or no.
'Cause I said so.
Aha. The bane of protesting boats everywhere. What is so think it through. Let's see. What would were the conditions met for the rule to turn on?
Yes.
Yes, that's right.
Yes. Yes.
So far, we're good. So, continue though. The
And
next
then-
question we have to ask is, one, were the conditions met for the rule to turn on? And yes, we've established that. Next question is, did blue sail above their proper course? So what would be the answer to that?
Yes.
So what would be blue's proper course?
To not go that high. Oh wait, they're at the start. Wait,
It is
I'm
after the start signal, whatever that may mean to us. But in this situation, let's think through that question again. What is blue's proper course when they're in this particular spot? Would hitting the boat be faster or slower than not hitting the boat?
I would say slower.
Probably would be, right?
Good choice.
So in theory, or not even in theory, just actually what's going on here is this has become blue's proper course, right? We don't go back and say, you messed up and that shouldn't have been where you were. Well, that doesn't matter. That's where we are right now. And so our proper course to continue and finish the race as fast as possible is to not hit this guy, right? Or not hit the orange boat. So we're gonna have to pinch up a little bit and get around there, right? If it had been a situation where, hey, we had to go so far that we actually started tacking, now all bets are off. You're not even the right of way boat anymore. You're tacking. But the fact that they were able to just kind of pinch up and get around is fine. That's what they would have done if the yellow boat was not there, right? So that's no penalty on that one.